Hello there, survivors. Today I've built this modern and sleek design for a breeding hangar using the Quantum Astral Premium cosmetics to turn it into something from a space base. You can also build this without skins using tech or metal structures or any materials that you really prefer. And if you don't use any cosmetics, you'll have to use greenhouse glass in certain areas for the windows. Of course, I recommend building it with the Astral skins. That's how I designed it, and I think it looks the best that way. But there's also some free options you could use, like the seamless skin for a nice white aesthetic, and of course Architect Paradise, written with ARK in the name, just so that you can have some really nice and clear glass for some of the structures if you don't want to go for the premium Astral cosmetic. But I definitely recommend using that one because it's got some really cool aesthetics and a little bit of the lights coming into it, which I really enjoy too. As always, if you enjoy seeing these build tutorials and you want to continue to see more, make sure to like the video. It really helps me out and I really appreciate it. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the videos that I post. And of course, feel free to leave your suggestions for future builds you'd like to see down in the comments below. Naturally, we want to start out with the foundations. We'll place one right down here, and we're going to be building the side of the building, which is actually going to be 17 long. So we'll just continue until we reach 17 in total, which is quite a long building, of course. So you want to make sure that you find a spot that is definitely relatively flat. Then we'll focus here along the back of the building. We want to make this 4 wide right here from that corner. We'll go in by 1 and then we'll add 5 more foundations. So we want to make sure we have 5 like this, counting, so not that one in the corner. And then over here we'll bring it out again and we'll make sure that we have 3 of them going here on the outside. We'll make this middle section 4 wide again before we can bring it back in and basically repeat that same pattern. So again, we want to make sure we have 5 foundations here before we bring it out by 1, and this is going to be 4 wide. And then the next part, of course, is going to be 17 long again, just as we did on the other side. We want to make sure that we bring this out all the way too. So now that we're getting the shape of the building down, we want to continue that process here on the front. So from the front length of the 17 long foundations, we want to also make this 4 wide, and then we'll go in by 3 before we have all foundations coming across. Now these foundations here in the middle are going to be 14 long, so we'll just keep going until we have 14. Then of course over here we want to make sure that these are 4 wide, and we can also bring this in, which should also have 3 here on the outside to get that shape. So the front is pretty clear. We have these 2 foundations sticking out. The back has a little bit more shape to it, but that is the entire foundation for the building and the entirety that we'll need for this big hangar. But now of course we need to start filling in these foundations so that we'll actually have the support we need to build our base. So we want to just go ahead now and start filling this in. Of course, this is always nice to do right away. We'll not need to worry about any support during our build, but also you can actually check and know for sure that this build is going to work wherever you're planning on. Of course, alternatively, in some spots you could have ceilings to fill the gaps, maybe a pillar underneath to give you support if your landscaping isn't quite as flat. But the easiest way, of course, is to find a decent spot with a big enough flat area to get this foundation down. So it just makes your life a little bit easier that way. So yeah, for now we'll just go around and start filling in all of these foundations, because obviously there's quite some that we'll need, but again afterwards it will make our building a lot easier by knowing that all the support we need is already in place, and we'll know that the spot that we've picked is actually big enough and that the entire building will fit, because at least the foundation will be already in the right spot, which is always the most important, to make sure it fits. Yeah, if you've got away with this, you'll know you can build the entire building. So yeah, we'll just fill in these last sections. Getting closer now. Just filling in the final few foundations. So yeah, quite a few foundations needed, as you can see. And of course, I'm building out of tech, but you can definitely make it out of different materials, maybe metal, maybe stone, depending on what you want to use. Don't forget about this little section here at the back. And with that, we have the entirety of the foundation for this breeding hangar in place. We'll start right here along the front with a layer of walls at those 4 foundations, and we'll do that same thing right over here on the other side. So basically starting to shape up the building shape. Then we'll take out our roofs. We'll want to go up by 2 roofs in total and add all of those in place. And again, we'll repeat that process here on the other side of the building too, so that we can kind of keep those mirrored, because they are going to be exactly the same, of course. We can pick out all walls and we can raise them up by 2 from the top of these roofs. And again, for both sides of the building, that's what we want to add. So just like that, we'll bring out our roofs again. Actually, I prefer flipping them around, especially if you're going to use the Astral Custom Cosmetics. And we'll add a layer of roofs right here. Don't want to add that one. So they're coming out back to the front a little bit. Same over here. And then on top of that, we want to add another layer of wall. And that's kind of going to be the supportive shape for these corner pillars of the building. So there we go. That's the shapes we need. Then we'll go over to the back, and we're basically also going to make that same section. So this 4 wide section. First of all, we'll take out our roofs. Again, I like to flip it around for the astral skin. Have a layer right there on the corner, and we'll have that same layer right over here too. So coming out from those foundations, then we can take out the walls, go 2 high for that entire section. We'll bring the same here on the other side. So again, 2 high walls before we can return to our roofs. And from this, we want to add 4 roofs going up. And of course, this entire thing is again 4 wide for this entire side part of the building. There we go. We'll do the exact same thing here over at the other side, of course. So going up by 4 roofs in total, and also making sure that it is 4 wide, and then we can start filling in this entire section. There we go. And then we should be able to take out our ceilings, and we can actually start to fill in this entire section. So basically connect these 2 ends up to each other by just connecting them with ceilings from one side to the other. It's going to be a 4 wide section, of course, which is basically the side supporting beam of the entire building. There we go. That's one side done. But again, we want to do the exact same thing on both sides. So also over here, we want to just make sure that we bring this entire thing across with ceilings, and we get this basic shape for the side of the building completed for both sides. There we go. Just a few more to connect this entire section up together. And with that, we've already given a little bit of shape to the building. Like, it's already starting to get the contours of the hangar that we're working on. Then we'll move over here to the side. Here at the back, of course, we can have a slope wall. Then we'll have 3 normal walls. And then this is where the shape can start to take place. We'll have 2 slope walls going up to the back of the building, which means we can also take out some roofs. So first of all, we'll have 2 wide roofs going up by 2. Then we'll have a roof coming back. Again, I like to flip those around for the astral skins. And we'll bring this one up by 3 in total. And again, keeping that 2 wide section. Then we can take out some ceilings and actually make sure we have 4 of them. And again, 2 wide. And then we can basically repeat or reverse this process. So again, flip the roofs around. We'll go down by 3 roofs in total. flip them around again, and have 2 more to reach back down to the foundations that we have in place, which is going to be the shape of the side window here. Now we can take out some more of the slope walls, and we can slowly start to fill in the sides here. So connected to all of these roofs for sure, we want to make sure that we have some of our sloped walls in place. We'll do the same thing right over here to start shaping up that side of the building. We'll add all the slope walls in. Then, of course, in some spots, we can definitely use some large walls to save on some structure. So, for example, those 3 can already be large walls. And we can actually, if we remove these for a moment, also use some large walls here. Again, just to fill up the shape a little bit more, save some structures, really helps you out. And then the rest of these sections, of course, we can start filling in by using normal walls to make sure that we have the whole side of the building completed. There we go. Just want to make sure we fill this all in all the way to the end again, and it's kind of just filling in the shape because we've already placed down all the slope walls. And then the final wall should look something like this, which is quite a nice shape and quite a nice big window to still let in plenty of light, which of course means that we can go over here to the other side and repeat that entire process. So for now, we'll have one of these slope walls over there. Then we'll have 3 normal walls before we can add 2 more slope walls going up. And then remember to remove these temporary ones for now. We can take out our roofs to get in that window shape. So again, 2 going up, then we flip them around, 3 coming back in to this shape. Let's definitely remove that one before we go into some ceilings, which are going to be 4 long and 2 wide, of course. And then we can reverse the process, so have the roofs coming back down by 3 at first, and then of course 2 of them coming back in on itself. Remove that one, and then we can once again take out our sloped walls to start filling in this entire shape of the side of the building. On the opposite side, there we go, start filling that all in along all the slope walls for the roofs all the way, so that we can focus on just filling in the wall. Again, we'll use some large walls where we can, filling in those gaps, saving a little bit on structures that way. And then afterwards, it's a case of just filling in the remaining gaps that we have with our walls to get another side of the building completed. So we'll follow all the way along. There we go. And then these final few, just filling them in, and then we have another side of the building done, and it's starting to take some proper shape now. But it's not completely done, because we also have the inside to worry about. We know that this section is 4 wide, but we only went in by 2, which does mean we can start to fill in this shape too. But first off, we want to start by adding in again our slope walls where we'll need them to get in a little bit more shape to the whole building. There we go. And then we also want to have one over here and some along these sides, of course, making sure that we have slope walls in place. Just makes it a little bit easier, in my opinion, that we don't have to keep switching between different materials. But of course, feel free to do it in any way. Right here in the middle, we're going to fill it all in. Then of course, we're going to check of where can we have some large walls just to save on structures. Now we can have actually quite a few there, so 3 of them along that side, and then over here should be able to add 2 just like this. Then we'll take out our normal walls. We'll start filling in this section of wall and all the way across this top section too. Now there's definitely some hidden storage that you could of course have in some of these sections if you really wanted or needed to. Actually, we'll get to that in a little moment, because, well, we're filling in most of it. But for example, over here, it will be very easy to hide a secret doorway And we could do the same over there so that you could easily still use those side sections of the building as part of your base. Yeah, without too many issues. And that would provide a nice little bit of extra hidden storage in these side walls. So we have done that. We, of course, want to repeat that process here on the other side of the building too. So again, the middle section here is where we'll start by adding in all the slope walls to this roofs, just to get that shape going and just to prevent us from switching back and forth between different structures all the time. Especially in survival, I always find that a little bit easier, especially really if you have a good idea of what you'll be building exactly. So then we'll have some of our large walls right over there. We'll have some over here too. And of course, also on this side, we can have some of these secret doors, so you could still easily hide some storage there. And then the rest of it, of course, is just a matter of filling it all in all the way along these walls to get those shapes filled in. And, well, basically the two big supports at the side of the building ready to go. And we'll just follow the last few gaps, follow the shape of the building, and there we go. So yeah, now we have this supportive wall, we have that supportive wall quite easily. Then it's time to take a look here at the front of the building. First of all, we'll take out a large wall right here on this corner. The same thing right over there on that corner. Then we can fill in a few normal walls here, a few normal walls there, and of course our slope walls right along the top of it. Then for the top section, we actually want to make sure that we have these two slope walls going on, a little ramp, that same pattern over here, normal wall and a normal wall. So just following that shape like that to create those side walls, and then it's time to focus on the actual entrance. Then here along the front, we want to make sure that we add two large walls there on the corner, the same two large walls on this corner, and we'll actually raise it up by one more to get the right height for this part of the building. Then we'll have a slope wall over there. We'll have three normal ones before we have another slope wall. And of course, the same thing here on the other side, slope wall, three normal walls, and then another slope wall to already create a little bit of the shape here for the entrance. Now we want to take out our behemoth cellar doors. We want to change to the garage door, and then we actually want to make sure that we snap it to the right point here. So one over here, so that is behind where we have that slope wall, and then we should be able to place another one right next to it. And that's how we get that big gateway, and especially with the astral skins, that looks quite nice. Of course, it means that you could open them separately if you go to one, but if you would enter through the middle, we have a very big door that opens all at once, which really looks like something from like Star Wars or something, which I really like. Then over here on the sides, we want to have our roofs, so we want to make sure that we have two of them right there and two of them over here on this side. I think this should work on official settings, but again, I'm not entirely sure, so you might have to check that out. And otherwise, yeah, you might have to just make a straight wall going up here instead, because I guess then they don't allow these cool little tricks. But yeah, we want to have some walls over here, so basically filling up that wall after that first roof until where the slope wall is, because of course we're gonna have some roofs here as well. Make sure to flip them around again to get the right shape going. So that is the shape we want, so that it looks like a nice entrance to a big space hangar. And then one more thing we want to add is another layer of roofs, but then right here on the front, going from one side to the other. So it connects up to these slope walls that we had on the side and the rest of these walls at the side of the building. But of course, then we also want to make sure that we fill in one section here of the ceilings to fill in that gap. And actually the same thing we can do here on the inside of the building, because also, of course, here we want to make sure that it is all connected up with each other. Then on the inside here, of course, we want to make this a little bit nicer. So taking out our large walls, we will have one right here and then two right next to each other over there to make sure that we can work away this entrance in a nice and satisfying way. So we want to place those up first. Then we can have some normal walls up here for the next layer to raise these up just a slight bit more. There we go. And then here on the inside, we want to have some slope walls on both sides, just like this, to create an entrance that looks also quite nice from the inside, of course. And speaking of that, we actually want to raise this up by one more layer because it needs to be the same height as the roofs on the front. So we want to make sure that it is all in order. Also filling up these little side walls just to make sure that it's all neatly filled up until where the roof is going to be. So that is the entrance here on the front of the building. And now it's time to work here on the back of the building. We'll take out our roofs, make sure to flip them around again and add one layer here across the bottom, skipping over this middle section, and then we'll have 5 more of them right here. Then we can bring out our walls. We'll have them 2 high. So for this entire section, we can add those on top, just like this. And then above that, of course, back again with the roofs. So once this time, we want to make sure we bring it up by 3. And then, of course, bringing them across for this entire section. Same thing over here. Now we will be adding some windows. We'll use some of the cosmetics for that. So if you want to have windows without using the cosmetics, you might have to go for greenhouse glass, even though that is much less strong than most of the other materials you could use. So now we still have a little bit of a gap between these two sections. So we want to take out our slope walls, add 2 over here, and then kind of just follow along the sides to fill in the gaps between them. So again, bringing out these slope walls all the way to the top here, and actually across the top here we can have one layer of walls going all the way across from one side to the other. There we go. Then we'll actually, of course, do the same thing here over the other side. So bring this one wall all the way across to the back, and then from here we can use that with these slope walls to fill in the gaps between the 2 different roof sections. Some more normal walls, and then the final 2 slope walls to follow that shape around, which fills in those gaps so we don't have those lingering around. And then from the top of that roof, we want to add a layer of 3 wide ceilings. So we'll just go in to start with the roof for this building, bringing them out by 3 for each of these sections, just like this. And then from here we can take out that big cellar door again. We can have one of them over here and then another one right next to it. So basically we have 2 nice cellar doors to drop stuff off through the roof. What I like to do is turn off the auto open so that you can also still use your rooftop to maybe park things up, or even do some breeding on the top if you need more space. So they will only open when you tell them to. Then we can take out our beams, have a nice border around the entirety of these cellar doors. So just following around the shape, even on that side. And then of course the same thing here over for the other side of the building. So again, circling around this entire cellar door to just line it up a bit nicer. And then the final section of this roof is just to continue filling this in all the way till the front. So just adding a few more ceilings for that section. The middle section for now, of course, we'll still leave open. We have some more special plans over there. But yeah, we'll bring this all the way across and fill in these final ceilings. Then it's time to do the middle section over here. So first of all, we want to have a tech gateway. We can then also add in some stairs right in front of it so that you can actually get into the building. We'll have some large walls next to it, as well as 3 of them right over here on this side and 3 of them right over there on the other side too. And don't forget to add 2 normal walls right above the entrance here. Then it's time to take out our roof, and we can go up by 3 in total, and of course fill that in for the entirety of this section, just like that. Then here on the inside of the building, we want to make sure that we have 2 of these walls before we add a sloped wall to it, but that will help us to fill in this the rest of this shape basically. So we want to make this slowly go up like that in a stair-like manner until we are the same height of those roofs at the back. Then we can add our slope walls all the way up to that ceiling line, just like this, and of course fill in the sides over here against those roofs, which means we can then also fill in these last gaps in the walls to make sure that those are completely filled in. Here along the top, we actually want to make sure that these walls continue up front all the way like that. Here along the front, we actually just want to also expand those walls, and then we can do the exact same thing along this side, of course, just raising this up by 1. So yeah, basically this entire middle section is now raised up by 1. We want to take out our ceilings again. We want to start filling this in. Just the first 4 layers, 4 layers of this top building seen from the front of the building. Then here along the sides, we want to make sure to continue this all the way up to the back of the building. Same thing over here, but then after we've had these 4, we can then cross over this section. So this is a 4x2 section, and the rest of the roof we can just happily fill in all the way through. There we go. And then here we can actually have some beams going around this gap to kind of make it stand apart. And then it will depend. If you're not going to use cosmetics, you'll fill this in with greenhouse glass, of course. If you're going to use cosmetics, you can still just use whatever ceiling material you like or is strongest. And then, of course, use the cosmetics to make a little skylight out of that window. That means we have a nice front entrance here now. We have a nice top of the building. We have a nice back of the building. But we still need to fill in some other part. First of all, before we do the actual windows on the sides, we will quickly go to the front. We'll take out our stairs, and we can of course also make sure to add some staircases into that big hangar door, which we definitely want to do, of course. And then we have the windows on both sides of the building. We want to do that right here in the middle. Again, if you're not using cosmetics, this is where you would use your greenhouse glass. If you are going to use cosmetics, then you can of course still use a strong material to get the best benefits, and then use the cosmetics later to turn it into a proper window. So for my build, I will do just so. So I'm gonna make a normal wall. As you can see, it's set 1 to the inside of the building, so there's a little bit more depth going on with the whole design, which I quite like. And then we can just kind of go all the way across, filling in this wall like a normal wall, which will then turn into a window. So then again, this is what you would turn it into, the window cosmetic. And of course, the exact same thing goes for the other side. Now, working with cosmetics, of course, you've got a few choices. You could go for the Astral like I did, and then we'll use those nice windows with a little bit of the lights going on. But maybe you don't want to necessarily go for the space look and you want to use something different. In that case, the Architect Paradise, and then Architect is written like Architect instead of just the normal way. Of course, we are playing ARK, so that makes a lot of sense. And then Architect Paradise has some really nice glass textures that work very well, and it's a free cosmetic, so you can always use that. But yeah, with that in place, we have this wall complete. We have now that wall complete. The entrance is all complete. The roof is all complete. And then all the way at the back, the only thing that's left to do is actually add in that gate and then we're done. We have our big hangar. I've on purpose left the inside pretty clear so that you can easily design it in such a way that you prefer for your breeding projects. The only thing that you might want to do is here above the entrance, fill in those walls too, so you don't have any gaps going on anywhere. It should all be filled in and linked up. And then we will have some windows, of course. So if we go and take a look at what the final result can look like, this is using the Astral Premium cosmetic. It's the Quantum Astral Premium, which is a really cool skin, very space-like vibes. I've used the white version of the skin on a bunch of this. I've also painted in some patterns. This is painted with the baby blue color, and then I painted in some patterns to kind of change up the roof a little bit, and then we also have that nice texture for these cellar doors. As soon as we get close, they will kind of fade out of existence, which is really cool. We have the skylight, of course, using those glass cosmetics. You can also see the cool little lights at the edges too, and then of course these cellar doors also have that skin that kind of fades out of existence, which is really nice. And then you have that color combination still going on all the way back down. Then over here you can see actually every other one is different. So we have normal walls in the sides and the middles, but then in between we actually have the window skin on it, so that we still can see through a little bit and let in a little bit of extra light. So that's the way I've skinned the back of the building. And then the sides, of course, is one big window section. As you can see, I think it looks quite cool. These space aesthetics have a very clean look with some really cool lights going on. And then if we go inside, it looks something like this. So again, pretty open space so that you have all the room for your breeding. You see a bunch of Rexes lined up here. We got a little raptor pack in the middle, some parasaurs, some stegos, and even a quetzal easily parked inside. And of course, you have plenty of room for some of the utilities you might need during breeding. And if you do the secret storage and stuff, you'll have even more room to hide your things in, or have your generators with a little bit of crafting, whatever you want to have in this nice, sleek and easy breeding hangar design. As always, if you enjoy seeing these build tutorials and you want to continue to see more whenever I post them, make sure to like the video, really helps me out. And of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And feel free to leave suggestions for future builds down in the comments below.